Chapter 22. Altering the Deal. Of course I altered the deal. Everyone literally calls me the Alterer of Deals. You should have seen this coming. Aquino, Alterer of Deals from the Third Sea Trade Route Taxation War by Duchess Toretta. Nocha. Despite the knife at my throat, I managed to keep my face calm and my breathing even as I was internally screaming. Why did I agree to this? It will only place more people in danger and get more innocents killed, you fool! Lord Lucian and Lord Elleans gasped. Lord Lucian's eyes darted around, clearly making the same connections as Mondo Celestina. Lord Elleans glared at Auriel. Oh, me, this was not our agreement. Auriel shrugged. Then I have altered the agreement. In that case, the agreement is void, which means we owe you nothing, I said, struggling to keep calm. Which means that we'll be taking our friends back. Hornka drew her sword. Auriel smiled and shook her head. Oh no, I don't think you will. Her tone became serious. One move and we'll kill the girl. Mother Celestina looked skeptical. Lord Elleans said, This is completely unnecessary. We could have just taken the deserter. Auriel shrugged. Why have one reward when I can have two? A deserter is one thing, but a Powatina noble is another. Seriously, does everyone know who I am now? I thought. We will be rich, and I know exactly how much you want that boy. Lord Elleans glared at her. I'm not just a boy. I am the heir to Luzeli. Auriel laughed. The heir to nothing. An estate burned twice. A house in ruin. Those are empty words you claim to. Lord Elleans crossed his arms and Lord Lucian glared at her, laid aside and muttered something that made Lord Elleans and Lord Lucian turn their eyes on her. Do you want your money or not? Stop arguing and just leave. I have letters to write, said Aleta. Auriel pressed her knife to my throat, making me flinch. I am not leaving without the girl. Neither are we, Hornka said. Hornka, Sol warned. Mother Celestina took out her staff and shot an icicle at Auriel. She missed. Everyone looked at her, terrified. I shut my eyes, bracing myself for the slash against my throat. Everyone else gasped. Mother Celestina started crying. I blinked, confused. Am I a wanderer now? But I could still hear the biting cold and Auriel's knife at my throat. I opened my eyes. Hornka, Sol, and the Medosalas were staring at the ground I stood on. She actually did it, said Mother Celestina. I frowned and was about to comment, but I sealed my lips shut. I hand went to my mouth in alarm. This does not seem healthy, I thought. Auriel smiled. Indeed I did. You thought I was bluffing, didn't you? Now, if you'll excuse me, I am about to be very rich. She turned to the rest of the mercenaries. Let's go. Take the body with us and find somewhere to bury it. Elio grabbed me as one would grab a child and wrapped me in a cloak. Some distant part of me welcomed the warmth while the rest panicked. We have other ways of making you stay quiet, but I don't like it when Auriel leaves on the crutch of magic, so don't try nothing, he muttered. My heart hammered in my chest and my breathing was fast as I realized that the Emperor had me again. Tears stung my eyes, and as much as I tried not to, I started to cry. Elio sighed. Auriel quietly sang a few bars of something, and I found myself falling through darkness and into the memory of Lucasia's execution. Dark clouds loomed in the sky as she was led up to the gallows and torn, ruined remained of her finery, wide-eyed and fearful, and looking like little more than a child. My eyes found hers and did not leave them. I struggled to keep my composure, hoping no one would see how terror and guilt were warring within me. I should be up there. Kill me instead! I wanted to shout it, but all I managed were a few squeaks that sounded dangerously close to crying. Someone put a hand on my shoulder and muttered some consolations that I did not hear. Luscasia stared at me as a soldier read out her crimes, shaking her head and mouthing, "Run!" I did not. I watched, helpless, as the noose was fastened around her neck. I shut my eyes and heard the sound of the rope being pulled taut, the sound of Musie's birds whistling a last cry of "Run, Biadrocia!" like Vir singing the high notes of her aria, and the loud crack of thunder that broke the sky and released the rain. A footnote, Musie's birds are a species of birds created by Musie, the spirit of music, who have the ability to mimic the tones and songs of practically anything, which has inspired many songs and stories, especially the eerie effect it creates during violent deaths. I opened my eyes, my breathing shakily. I backed away slowly and then saw her lifeless body hanging there. Tears stung my eyes and something awoke within me. I gathered my skirts and sleeves in my hand and ran as quickly as I could. I woke up sweating and gasping. The ice on my lips had melted. The side of my face stung as if it had been recently hit. My hands had been tied together, and I wondered if the numbness in my fingers was from cold or because they had been tied too tightly. It was evening. I sat up and looked around. The mercenaries were sitting around the campfire. Auriel was cooking some kind of stew. It smelled like meat, so I guessed they were not planning on feeding me. That was fine, though. I had gone for much longer periods with no food, and there was grass. Elio and Lilia were talking next to me. Elio was holding some kind of shackles that Lord Lucian and Lord Elias, both sitting on my other side, were eyeing suspiciously. Alita was writing something, and Pavokit was chained to a nearby tree. He seemed to be taking this much better than I had. I wondered why he had not tried to burn it down until I noticed something had been fastened around his wings so that he couldn't fully open them. He would not get far without flight. Elio noticed I was awake. "You were speaking Lepusian. Don't do it again." I frowned. "I have not said anything since Inna." His expression soured and I flinched, my eyes going to what he was holding. "In your sleep, you were speaking Lepusian." I wanted to tell him that I had no way of controlling what I said in my sleep, but I knew that arguing would not get me anywhere I wanted. "Why are you helping him?" I asked Lord Lucian after about a minute. "What do you mean by that?" he asked. "Why would you help the Emperor? It will not do any good for you." I looked down. "I have lived under his rule. Your blood will not help you. It will be a gilded cage, but a cage no less." I frowned, remembering Auriel's words to Lord Elias. "I know how much you need the money," she had said. "It is money, is it not?" I asked. He did not answer. "He will betray you. Everyone knows how much he does not like the Fae. What makes you think you are any different to him?" I was cut off by Elio hitting me in the back. "Stop your traitorous words, Kronia," he said. I sighed. It could have been worse. I sat back and tried to eat the nearby grass and figure out an escape plan. But the bonds on my wrist made it quite difficult to eat. I could not untie them, but perhaps I could bite through them, or cut through them on a rock. The rope in my teeth would be annoying, yes, but it was worth it. I was not sure how to get Pavokid free, though. It would be hard enough escaping on my own, and I guessed that chain was made of iron. If I got free and made it back to the others, perhaps we could find them and rescue Pavokid. But I would need to work fast. I do not know how much longer it will be before we reach Pel, I thought. It had stopped snowing, and I could see mountains, so we were definitely somewhere in Draco, but we were still in the north by the border. When I finished eating, I looked around and spotted a rough-looking rock nearby. Slowly and carefully I made my way to the rock and began moving my wrists back and forth over it. It was a long and tedious process, but it worked. I examined my wrists. It seemed I had not moved around too much in my sleep, and they seemed fine. I looked over at the mercenaries. By now it was getting dark, and Auriel had finished cooking, and they were eating it. Since they were focused on the food, as long as I did not trip or step on a twig or anything, I would be fine. I crept away, pulling my skirts up so I would not trip on them, and then almost immediately tripped on a rock. I yelped before I could stop myself and put out my hands to stop my fall. It did stop, but not because of my own hands. I looked to see who it was, and my heart sank. Elio had grabbed the back of my robe. He yanked me to my feet and grabbed my arm. He took the shackle I had seen holding and clamped it around my wrist. There's a bright, burning pain where it touched me, one I knew all too well and never got used to. I screamed. Pavoki tried to move towards me, his eyes wide, and Lord Lucian yelled something about Xionod conventions. But I barely saw either as memories of every other time I had felt this pain rush through my head, and I tried desperately to stay in the present. "That's enough!" Auriel was hovering nearby, sounding disturbed, almost panicked. "Put that thing away!" Elio removed the shackle, but kept a tight grip on me, twisting my arm uncomfortably behind my back. I took a deep breath, gathered up the remains of my composure, and stood up as straight as I could, putting my free hand behind my back. I was shaking, and the sound of 15 years of my scream still ran in my ears, but at least I could make eye contact. Auriel reconstructed her composure as well, returning to her confident and almost amused demeanor. "Now, I'm very confused by this. Did you honestly think you had a chance?" "It worked in Gresola," I thought. "There are 6 of us and 1 of you, and if you think we'd take our eyes off of you for even a second..." She laughed for a bit. Then her tone became serious. "You dead wrong. And you're just a weak little clonia. You can't hope to stand up to the might of a dragon," Elio said. Lilia nodded in agreement. Lord Lucian, Lord Elias, and Auriel cast some dirty looks. Auriel looked thoughtful. "Now I have a proposition for you." She looked over at Pavokit. "Both of you. If one of you tries to escape, or does escape, we let the other. That is against the honor conventions," Lord Lucian said. Elio, Lilia, and Auriel glared at him. "Don't interrupt me, boy," Auriel snapped. Lord Lucian and Lord Elias were clearly angered by her tone, but neither made any comment. Auriel turned back to Pavokit and me. "Trust me, it's much worse for us than it is for you. I don't trust you at all," I thought. "So why don't you make this easy on us and just stay here?" "Wonderful. Then I will not move from this spot. I'm glad we have reached an agreement," I thought. Auriel addressed everyone now. "All right, back to dinner now. Alita will take the first watch." "All right, Mama," Alita muttered. Well, I did not actually hear what she said, but this is what I imagined she said. Everyone returned to where they had been sitting, except for Auriel, who sat down next to me. Lilia took out a length of rope and began winding it around my wrists, so tightly that even moving them a little was painful. I bit back a complaint, because if Elio and my past experiences were anything to go off of, she would either not care or make it worse. She did the same for my feet, which ruled out both ideas I'd come up with for escape. While I sat there, trying to figure out if all blood flow to my hands and feet had been cut off, Pavokit looked around awkwardly, and the mercenaries finished dinner. Once Auriel finished, she turned to me. "Now it's time for bed." I frowned. "But you just finished..." I was cut off by Auriel singing again. I had just figured out what she meant when I fell into darkness again. This time, with no dreams. So, we stood there in shock as the mercenaries left us Pavokit and Banasanya Notch's body. Luzelus cried, and his face was bloodless, her eyes wide and her hands shaking. I stared at the blood on the snow, slowly being covered by fresh snowfall, in disbelief, the scenes replaying in my head. Panosamia Noche had closed her eyes and then braced herself, and then Auriel had slit her throat, and time had seemed to slow as she fell, her blood staining the snow. Juanca looked at Asina. "Why would you think that was a good idea?" It was almost a shout. "I didn't know she'd do it." Asina said defensively. You heard what she said about money. Why would she kill someone so valuable? How do you know the Emperor don't want her dead? Haruka said bitterly. She shook her head. The Emperor executes traitors himself. If he'd go out of his way to execute someone like Pavokit personally, he'd definitely do the same for Panos and Ganosha. And I read the wanted poster. Her voice was shaking. Haruka crossed her arms and looked down. Said you sought wrong. Now she's dead because of you. Asina looked down, blinking rapidly and breathing heavily. She turned and flew away, throwing her head on as she went. Haruka punched me in the arm. What was that for? I said, annoyed. Your annoying comments, she answered. We walked back to Ellean's house. Ellean opened the door and looked at us. I am glad to have you back, physically, she said to me. And Pavkich is missing. I hope you'll get him back soon. Then she frowned, looking worried. Where are Panosomyanocha and Mezosela Sineshka? Lucellius mumbled something, seemingly too shaken to speak at a normal volume. Panosomyanocha's dead, Haruka said bitterly. Her eyes went wide. Oh, spirits, how? Auriel wanted to kill her, and Pavokit said that wanted both her and Pavokit, and said she'd kill her if we tried anything. But Sina thought she wouldn't do it, but she did. It was reasonable. She got a great deal of money, and it doesn't seem like the person to throw that away. We all turned to see that Asina had appeared behind us. She seemed calmer now and was struggling to hold the book with her good arm. Her sapphire blue elytra were open, and her wings occasionally flapped in an attempt to stay balanced. She pushed past us and went inside. I should go talk to her, Luce said. She flew in as well. So, what's it like being a wanderer? Ellean asked. And I think Peparuka wanted you to carve for something. Oh, I messed with my sleeve, feeling my face eating. I just remembered that I have something to do. Kyoto! I ran off before she could argue. Glad I wasn't a fairy. Footnote. Kyoto is a Vixic informal farewell. It's used for, friends or children or to be condescending. Peparuka was a nice girl, a good artist, and one of the few people in town who got use out of the library, but it would take a miracle for us to even get a full, understandable sentence out to each other. In the basement, Lucellius was trying to talk to her sister, who was reading her book and muttering to herself, deep in concentration. I sat on my blankets, considering if answering Ellean's questions could have been so bad after all, and wishing I had some wood to carve. After some time, Asina frowned. Interesting. Lucellius looked up, blinked. What? She looked off. Oh! She looked awkward. How long have you been there? Several minutes. Why? Oh, she shook her head. Well, anyway, I've been reading about light magic and glamour. Thankfully, the librarian still has a few books on magic, and is good at hiding them. Lucellius frowned. Why? We know Auriel is a skilled mage. Light magic can be used to create illusions and for invisibility and camouflage. She was talking quickly, reminding me of her explanation of the Iron War. Lucellius blinked. You're speaking too fast. Asina explained it in Sylish. At least that's what I assumed she was saying. I walked over. Oh, hello, she said. Hello. So, what does it mean? I think she may have used light magic to give the illusion that she killed Nambiosha, like Lidovita in Tolapalo's story. Are you sure? Lucellius asked. She put one hand on Asina's shoulder. I know you're upset. Are you sure you're not just in denial? Asina shook her head. No. Didn't you think Nambiosha's fall and Elio picking her up looked slow or jerky, as if they were skipping through the movements? It says that jerky movements can be as a sign of a glamour, either due to the split between reality and illusion, or due to moving as slowly being hard. She pointed to the relevant paragraph. Making a convincing glamour is difficult even for a skilled mage like Auriel. It matches with what we know of her. As I've said, she wants money, and it would make sense for her to get rid of her larger source of that. And we wouldn't try to rescue her if we thought she was dead. We tried to rescue Pavokids also. What's the point? Luzelus asked. And time always seems to slow when something bad happens. Nobiosha's more valuable, and they won't think we won't be looking for her. They'll try something to keep us from finding her. But one of them is Pavokid's sister. I think she's a part of this because he is, not because of the money. She'd care about him more than Banosamianocha, I said. She nodded. I think she's here because her parents want to cover up what he's been doing. But if they were intentionally hiding her from us, it still wouldn't make sense for her to reveal her location. It's only extra efforts that would make our team angry with her. Besides, she's a Synnesian noble. Why would she try to rob a Kronia? Pavokid would. Luzelus crossed her arms. I don't think he was really raised like one, and anyway, he's the exception, not the rule. If nobles weren't loyal to the Emperor, it'd be nearly impossible for him to survive. Lucelus shook her head. Asinasi. Don't call me that, she said sharply. Asina, she said. I know this isn't easy for you, but we all saw her die. I nodded. I know Elio and Lilia, they wouldn't have that calmer reaction to magic, especially something as powerful as that. Asina sighed and looked down, her shoulders sagging. Perhaps you're right. Franka came down. All right, we need to find Pavokid. She noticed the book. What's that about? Asina closed it. Oh, nothing. Oh, well, do you know where they could have gone? She adjusted her glasses and frowned. Considering how long it has been since our fight, I'm guessing not somewhere far from the town, possibly even across the border. It's been less than an hour, so they can't have gone far. Perhaps you could follow the scent of their souls. Hanka shook her head. Not in this weather. Not very well, at least. Oh, well, I could try shadow magic, but that would probably end in an unscheduled and unwanted nap, and with the snow covering their footprints... She started pacing and muttering, then stopped and looked up. I will need a map, preferably of Northern Vix and Draco, a quill, and ink. Franka brought down what she needed. Apparently, Alien practiced writing in her free time. Now, the average flying speed of a fairy is about 10 miles per hour, of a dragon 20, and the average walking speed of a Vix is about 3 or 4 miles per hour. Assuming they went the fastest speed they could, that of a dragon of 20 miles per hour, that means they must be somewhere within this circle. It could take us hours to reach that. Yes, if we couldn't narrow it down further. Now, we know that they are going southeast of Pearl, which means that they must be somewhere within this area. She drew 2 lines through the circle, leaving about a quarter of it. Conveniently, this map has roads. However, I doubt they'll stay on them without our wagons, and it'll look suspicious. Still, this will narrow down the search. She frowned. So we will need a route that stays away from the walls, but we'll get them to Pell easily. So what is the closest point on this circle? That's far enough away from the roads, while also being close to Pell, while also having a pass to it that avoids roads. She thought for some time, then drew a circle on the edge of the circle. Here, around here. Then let's go. We don't have no time to lose, said Franka. As Alien entered some of her warmer clothes, since the temperature had dropped a lot since the snow started. They were too bulky for Asina and Luzelus to put under the wings like they normally did, and too heavy for their light to lift, so they had to walk, which they were annoyed about. We casted our weapons and set out. Dark, ominous clouds hung in the sky, occasionally flashing with lightning and dropping a steady and heavy stream of snow. Asina sighed, pushed up her glasses, and pulled up her hood. Started walking south towards the place Asina had marked, slowed by the fact that she and her sister were almost drowning in snow, which was now almost as tall as they were. We gave up on that as soon as we got out of town and carried them instead. Lucelus was fine with this, but Asina hated it, grumbling to herself all the time. As we walked, I breathed deeply, even though every breath felt like being stabbed, trying to make out the scent of Elio, Lilia, and Pavokid's sauce. Franka was doing the same. Asina was trying to keep her head down, every so often sighing or groaning and cleaning off her glasses. I managed to pick out the wooden scent of Elio and Lilia, the charcoal smell of Pavokit, so they were faint and intertwined with each other, and other unfamiliar scents. "Did you find anything?" I asked Juanka. "I think I smell them. What about you?" she asked. I nodded. We tried as best we could to follow the trail. We thought that that the warmer weather of Draco might make it easier to pick out the scent, but it just turned the snow into rain, which made it harder and more annoying. Asina sighed and muttered something, taking off her glasses and putting them in her pocket. The storm stopped in the late afternoon, or maybe we just left it, and our journey became much easier and faster. Asina put her glasses back on, and we all got as much water as we could out of our clothes before continuing. Asina and Roselu now flying. There were only a few fresh scents I could find. I recognized Pavokits, Lilias, and Elios, and picked up some others that I guessed were the other mercenaries. There was another faint but fresh scent, one of fresh bread. "Do you smell bread?" I asked. Haruka frowned and stopped, sniffing. "I think so. Do you recognize it?" "It was how..." She blinked. "It was Panasonic Noche's scent, but that can't be. She died. We all saw it." "Unless that is only what Auriel wanted us to think," Asina muttered. Haruka looked up. "What?" "Oh, nothing," she said, louder. Haruka shrugged. "Maybe it's just another Kronia." "Or perhaps Nobiotcha's alive," Asina muttered. We followed the scents until night came, and the final crescents of Panis rose. When we came upon a group around the campfire, we kept our distance. I could see grey and white fur, and the glint of smooth scales in something metal, and the shimmer of fairies' elytra. "What can you see?" Haruka whispered to Luzelus and Asina. "3 fairies, 2 Vixor, and 2 dragons. Everyone is asleep except for one of the fairies," Asina said. Luzelus nodded. "It must be them," she frowned. "Any ideas?" "Well, we could either do this stealthily or by force. Both are very difficult. The latter is more straightforward, and the former is less dangerous," Asina said. "I know it's possible to use magic to force someone to sleep, but that would mean calling upon you with a song rather than using my staff, and I'm not sure how best to do that." She looked up thoughtfully. "When we return, I should find some information about that. It's incredibly useful. I wonder if..." "Asina," Lucelus said. Asina blinked and shook her head. "Yes, I'm sorry. Now, stealth probably won't work, so we must try force. I think that Sol and Frankirk should go to the camp and fight at close range, while I attack from a distance, and Lucelus provides support. Auriel and Alita should be our biggest concerns, since Auriel is a formidable fighter and the only adult, and Alita is the most physically powerful and probably has the best education. When we free Pavokit, get out as soon as possible. Now, I know that everyone is sleeping, and it is very tempting, but don't pull any stupid pranks." "Great. We should start as soon as possible," Juanka said. I shrouded myself in shadow as we headed down the hill.